This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, true seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. I want to share with everybody today the Tim Miller envelope. We're going to be going through some of that, some of the things that it means. We'll be looking at some faces of Jack, and we're really kind of winding things up at this point, coming down to the last few slides of this presentation. I'm very excited about that, but that means there's a lot of end work because the final slides are going to have a lot to do with putting together the different linguistics and statements and poetic type references that we see throughout all of these different communications and kind of making an identification or a cross connection from one to the next. So that's going to be a lot of work, and I look forward to that. But we will get back today to the Tim Miller letter, and we are going to be beginning with the actual envelope side of it. So again, we talked about this before. We can see these lines here and the way it appears to be kind of an envelope in the midsection of the letter here. And of course, this was then tri-folded, and I'm assuming that that was the way that it was mailed. Though I didn't ask Tim Miller if it came in an envelope, and I'm suspecting that it didn't, since it seems to be addressed properly to Tim Miller here. And he was very aware of Texas EquiSearch because he included that as well in it. And I want to remind everybody that Tim Miller received this in September of 2005. He turned it over to the police department once he received it. And inside of a year, he said when he went back to question and ask about this letter appeared to have been missing, which is very interesting because we've seen so many things go missing in this particular case. On the mailing side of the envelope, we see the word risen at the top. Do not discard is just beneath that. And then it is Tim Miller's EquiSearch 4013 FM 517 Suite B, Dickinson, Texas 77539. And of course, Tim had stated that this was mailed one zip code over, and he didn't believe that Jack had an opportunity to have been the one to have done this, since the information that we had at the time showed that Jack was in Washington. Again, I remind everybody, I spoke about it last week when we said that Dennis had flown out to Texas on Tim Miller's dime. They went and visited Jack's aunt. She had indicated that Jack had stored some boxes there for quite some time. She didn't think she was ever going to see him again, and thus she discarded them. But admits at the same time that Jack showed up in September of 2005 looking for those boxes. I, wish that I was more aware of this case back in those days and what was going on, but I don't think anything could have stopped that trashing or getting rid of those boxes. But there may very well have been some great evidence inside of it. And I can only suspect that if Jack is back at his end of life, September of 2005, he passes away August of 2006. So basically he's 11 months away from death, and he has to be fairly ill. He is suffering from congestive heart failure. So to take that trip to Texas meant that those boxes, I'm assuming, was pretty important. And when I roll that up in the time frame of what we've seen go on, Dennis reveals Jack to the FBI in 2000. gives DNA to them somewhere between 2000 and 2002, in which case we don't get precise results from it that gives us any information as far as I know, even though there is statements by others where Dennis has claimed that there was a partial DNA match. I remember him saying a partial DNA match. I just don't remember him saying who it was. Of course, in 2002, Dennis is telling Jack that nobody believes him and that all his stuff is getting round filed. And then Jack gives Dennis his shed in Arizona, in which case he is able to obtain things like the Eaton bond paper, the PA system, some of these other items that were precious to Jack, or at least Jack had made it known that he did not want Dennis to get rid of them. Should he ever decide to throw it away, he was to give it back to Jack. 2002, we see that first letter mailed to Tom Voight. 2003, a follow-up letter saying, you should probably know who I am now. Let's make this movie bigger than life. To now the 2005 letter, where it is basically stating, my identity is no longer secret and understanding who's at fault is key. And that's the letter that we're talking about right now. So we will see up here in the left-hand corner of this mailing of the envelope, Tom Humble. We've already talked about the Tom and Humble connection to Tom Voight's letters. This either says 595 or 695. I cannot make it out on the cutouts. West Main League, City, Texas, 77573. And to remind everybody that Charles's girlfriend, Crystal, which was the daughter of one of Jack's good friends, actually lived either in or near this zip code, close enough to have been able to hop over and mail this letter, especially if Jack is taking the time to make visits at this point while he's trying to collect things, or he's there seeing his son. I mean, I know the son is dating Crystal. If he's wandering around with Jack to all these different locations, then this is probably an opportunity, I would suspect, for him. So again, just conjecture at this point. There is proximity with this letter and Jack at this particular time, confirmed by Jack's aunt. It also says down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and we did talk a little bit about this. I would love to get more information on it, but it says Corvette Concepts Fiasco Mystery. So as I had stated, the front side of this letter had taken credit for what I believe many, many of the crimes. In fact, it was both front and back that you would find different indications that would suggest that he was either a part of, knew of, or was telling on these particular crime sprees. So the Corvette Concepts Fiasco Mystery was a murder of 3 people at a car dealership in Texas. And of course, that is still an unsolved case at this point. So seeing that on there really kind of like, whoa, let me check it out. I looked at it. It definitely looks like something that they would be a part of. It also says more projects to come. So, of course, that more reference that we've been talking about for oh so long in the Zodiac case. When you flipped, and up here, we had a stamp. And of course, I do believe that I have a stamp section that we're going to be looking at and going over and cross-connecting the stamps that are used in these communications. Somebody had stated it was something like a ranger patch or something like that with a Z underneath it, though I can't really quite get that from the cutout version. So we'll look to see what the hand version attempted to portray when it drew it. So here on the cutouts on the trifold, we can see the word railway, accessible, neighbors, attack. There's something here in the left-hand corner I cannot quite make out. The word rural, serious suspense, vulnerability. You could look for my clues, photos. We've had all of this in this presentation as it pertains to Jack and these crimes. Also, class shots. I'm not exactly sure what it is supposed to entail. It does begin with a 409, which I took that to mean some type of phone number. I believe that I even looked or attempted to look that up. We'll continue on the other side with that to see how that holds out. But on the bottom part of the trifold, it says, Pat the cop is a ridiculous fooler. NASA horseman Abel is not the devil sought by the League City Blue Fuzz. The key to the nightmare field of death is that it's a hectic public location for the little shrine and more are secret. Officer Pat serial profile process work is flawed. The phantom, my MO changes. Of course, we also see the 666 and the laughing masks, which may entail a whole nother crime spree that I've just not discovered at this point, but I still look out for it anytime I get a chance. One of the ones that came to mind was the smiley face murders. Not really quite sure if I can find anything else that had smiley faces in regards to it, but I definitely didn't see anything as far as Son of Sam is concerned. But I might give this letter to Christina Clow to see if she has any recognition of the symbols, because she follows the symbolism of the works of the Son of Sam, and she believes that there's some Satanistic stuff that's inside of there. But then she also told me that my birthday falls on the pagan holiday Beltane, which is May 1st. And she said, wow. And I thought, wow, what's this about? I mean, pagan sounds bad. So I go to look it up, and it's really just a fun festival, in which case they're moving the cows from one location to the next. They're feeding the earth, if you will. And it sounds like merriment. It's basically Celtic or a Irish tradition that was happening way back in the day. Another person had told me that pagan rituals had been around even longer than Christianity, but I don't know the truth of that because I don't really follow religion. I just didn't see this as a horrible thing. So I'm still kind of bewildered by the fact that when you think pagan, you think something Satanistic, and you hear the word paganist. Again, I want to say that this is just rhetoric that Christianity has brought up in order to make these people look bad. But everything that I could read or find on Beltane was a pleasurable, happy change of season, moving of the cows, and participating with the earth. So why they make it sound so bad, I'm not sure. I know that a lot of our nursery rhymes when we were kids were really horror stories that they've sweetened up and made nice for us to watch these days as Disney movies. So I can see how people and religions and cultures and things twist things after all. So here is the handwritten side of it. And so again, I could not make this stamp out. So this actually has the Z underneath it. And because we can't see that on the cutout version, I don't know if the person made this up, that if this was legitimately something that was on the letter. But if it is something that's on the letter, then it definitely has to tell us that the individual was in possession of the cutout letter from Tim Miller in order to do what they've done with this, or this was legitimately written by the same author, which would be the Zodiac, and that's why we see the Z underneath what is supposed to be some type of a ranger patch, I believe. But here we see those tailgate lifts on the bottom part of the Z, and on the top part of the Z, that's something that we saw all the way back in 1945 in Jack's handwriting. Actually, we've seen it several times. We saw it through Black Dahlia. There was a couple different places that I notated this tailgate lift that I call it. So it wasn't shocking for me to see here because it's not found in any of the other letters throughout this whole entire cutout. So, or at least the handwritten version of it. So if they did mimic this stamp correctly, number one, it means that person had the cutout version. Number two, that could suggest that whomever stole it is the one that created this handwritten version, or we are simply looking at something that was duplicated and possibly sent to the police department as well, and it went missing with the cutout version as well. So kind of up in the air about it. So completely written out here. Let's see if there was anything that I was missing. I do not see, but we can tell that the handwritten version here is actually missing several things that we just talked about. So it's missing whatever is up in this left-hand corner. It's missing the class shots and this beginning of a phone number down here. So the zip code, let me put on my glasses. Says 77573, and this is for League City, Texas. So basically, the mailing is coming out of League City, and Tim Miller is in Dickinson, so he's basically one zip code over. We talked about the Tom. You could look for my clues. And again, you could look for my clues. So is this just a confirmation of what I have seen on the portrayal of the Zodiac in different types of movies and documentaries and things like that, where clues were potentially left behind at each crime spree that would cross-connect back, as if the communications don't already, but legitimately something left at each crime that would allow them to tie that back to another crime, is very interesting to me.
Morning.
Good morning, Nolan. How are you?
Sorry I'm late.
That's
I'm
okay.
good.
Better late than never, right?
Yeah.
And it's an off one, right? We're doing a pre-record. Nobody expects to be up on Monday morning doing this when it's not going to air till Friday.
I was on my way to Home Depot.
Oh, no. I'm going to actually be doing a lot of that today. I'm building a shed. We just finished off the cement pad for it. So today we're going to erect the shed, finish repairing a fence that we had to replace a 4x4 to, and then getting ready. I'm actually going to be putting up a netted and screened, or I'm sorry, I guess that's both the same thing, screened and curtained gazebo over the top of a hot tub. Woohoo!
Wow.
Cannot wait. But I probably won't get to that until after I actually paint the outside of the house, which is the next major project. So it looks like I'll be going back to Home Depot too.
Wow.
So basically we're going over the envelope side right now of the actual letter to Tim Miller and some of the things that I was pointing out. So, let's see, we did that. Railways, how Jack got around for most of the crimes. You could look for my clues. We just talked about that. Photos, we found photos. I always laugh when I hear somebody talk about what we believe to have been the possibility of Black Dahlia mid torture. And some people look at it and call it a blob. Well, if you have no foresight to see what that blob is, I think that it was shown fairly clearly, and they tried to downplay it as if Dennis had manipulated something, when the reality is that all he did was develop the negatives because they were on 110 rolls of film. However, they appear to be photographs, which we can prove based on the edge of the original photograph that this picture was taken of when it was placed onto a 110 piece of film. And then once the negative was produced, all we really did was use contrast and coloring to raise or lower highlights within the picture to see if we could get an image to come to play. And quite frankly, to me, I feel like it's extremely obvious what it looks like. Stephen Dewhurst thought that it was Rose Cole, another person who went missing during the time frame of the Zodiac. So obviously he was a professor for Arizona State University, and his profession basically was looking at pictures for NASA and making out different things inside of photographs. So for him to have also identified with it being an individual or a person, I just think he has the wrong person, because Rose Cole didn't go missing during the time frame that the film that we believe that it was originally shot on was around, which was your 1940s era. Let's see that
You saw those pictures at your house with
Yes.
Dennis came over.
Yes.
Showed them to us. Yeah.
And we also took those pictures down to LAPD at one point in time and met with Mitzi Roberts in the cold case division and spoke. Well, I sat down and gave the presentation on the handwriting, in which case her chief or captain, whom I don't know, he was a person above her, had come in and sat down, and you could see him chomping at the bit. Like he's like, oh, with everything that I'm saying in regards to the handwriting. And then we get back home and she's told, don't touch it. You're not allowed to work on it. No. And I mean, literally an all out, she said, or Dennis said she was crying when she was telling him this, when she was returning the negatives, and she returned all the negatives except for the 2 that we believe had Black Dahlia on it. Yeah.
They're concealing evidence.
They're usurping it, basically. They're just taking it in and then making sure that nobody has it to put the pieces together, is how I feel.
They're trying to discourage you and Dennis from doing anything further.
Yeah, why don't they all just come together with all the evidence that Dennis has ever given them, place it into a nice little pile, and then let's sort that out and see where that leads us in regards to this case. It seems rather simple, but just like this letter, it's probably all gone missing. She claims to have not known what happened to these two negatives, that she brought back all that was given to her when they were originally, I guess, taken to the forensic lab to be looked at. So who knows? We'll never know.
Well, it was someone higher up than her supervisor made the decision to nix it.
Right. Well, and like I said last week, we went through a lot of Jack's photographs because he traveled back home quite often to Texas during Easter, during summer, during holidays. He was there a lot, and of course there was always some type of a unsolved murder going on around that same time frame. Dennis had collected, I think, about 10 or 15 dates in which case people had gone missing or were found dead, and they coincided with trips Jack had made out there to Texas, including the dates that they went missing and things like that. I did a deeper dive into his photograph, and I found several more, probably encompassing just about everybody I thought that had been killed in the 70s and 80s, and those went missing while Tim Miller and Steph Watts was at my house, with Dennis's evidence, his photographs, everything were laid out all over my pool table inside my house. And we had the stack sitting there. We were showing it to Tim Miller and Steph Watts. They were very well aware of what that particular stack of photos meant amongst all the other photos we had gone through. I hadn't had an opportunity to actually scan them in, which I'm really disappointed about now, because we probably should never have told anybody what we thought they were until we had them cataloged and images taken of them. But too late. I now know. All right. So let's see here. Hey. Okay. So on this, we had the reference to the cops with the same adjective that the Zodiac used, which is blue, and of course being called fuzz. Speaking of the public location again, more secret again. So we're seeing doubling down on these two items. Reference to another police officer who must have named the wrong suspect. I don't know who Pat Serial is. Because I didn't know if he was just making a joke out of somebody's name, but if the guy's name is Serial, well, it would make sense. He chases serial killers. I don't know. But Pat Serial was supposedly looking at the cases for the League City because the author is stating that Abel wasn't the person that they were looking for. And it is claimed that Abel took his own life, jumped in front of a train on one of his quads or something like that, which I find a little hard to believe as well.
I think they killed him.
Most probably. It's the suicide.
He didn't seem like that type of guy who would take his own life. He seemed like a free spirit.
Yeah. He had property. He was running, horses on the property, but of course they always like to say that those that are trying to inject themselves or assist in investigations can possibly be
guilty.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Or he may have been part of a bigger situation. I don't know.
Yeah, and then he could control the narrative. But here's the thing. He gave them access to his property. He gave them horses to do the search. And they subsequently found 4 to 6 girls. So
right.
he would be leading them, if anything, to these bodies if he knew. He didn't lead them to them. Of course, they found them on their own during the search. But he's giving them an opportunity to go in and find them, which you wouldn't really
access.
Yeah. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So reference to another profiler who must have named the wrong suspect in another case that Jack is responsible for. And Pat Serial in reference to the second admission of taking credit for the Phantom. So we see the Phantom again. He says, my MO changes. That's something that is obvious in all of the crimes listed in this display because we see by gun, by knife, by rope, by fire. We see all different kinds. And I think that they were probably trained back in the day to only connect similarities in a crime. So they didn't have a good link analysis system for proximity and time and for different MOs because they believed serial killers committed the same type of crime each and every time, which we're seeing with the Zodiac firsthand, he said, "You're never going to know what I do." Let's see. There are more photos to come that I will update on the Texas murder timelines of when Jack was visiting Texas in relation to the murders listed throughout this display. Now that's disgusting. So I say that's disgusting because I obviously created this before losing those photos. Yeah. That's a little disappointing. So, man, another thing to remind me of my mistakes. More projects to come. As always, Jack is calling someone named Pat out about being wrong about their suspect Abel for the League City deaths. This is something we saw in the Zodiac. Jack takes credit for the Corvette Concepts murders in Texas, the Army Ranger patch above the Z for Zodiac. And we know that Jack originally started in the armed forces, so that's not out of his realm. Tim Miller's favorite suspect, Clyde Edwin Hedrick, was cleared by a handwriting examination that was requested by his private investigator, Bill Young. But Tim still sued for wrongful death and won a default judgment against him. I want to say it was for like $14 million, some ridiculous amount that you can take one look at this guy's picture and know he can't pay.
Yeah.
Where's the satisfaction?
He didn't even respond.
Who?
Hedrick. He won by default.
Yeah. But well, the man had no ability to defend himself. Why would he show up? Again, and what satisfaction would money give? I just don't even understand taking out a civil wrongful death on basic evidence that is. I'm losing the stupid word.
If it weren't for default judgment, he wouldn't have won because Hedrick was cleared by the handwriting. So if he would have fought it, he would have won the civil judgment against
Hedrick. Hedrick wasn't cleared. I want to say it was 2014, so he did take the suit out. Maybe I had the numbers wrong. He did take the suit out after I cleared him from handwriting, but I'm sure Tim Miller didn't offer that handwriting assessment up. Right. Again, when I was comparing him to the Zodiac. So where's the proof that Clyde Hedrick had ever been in California as the Zodiac? But that's where Tim Miller got it wrong. He's trying to force fit his perfect suspect, he thinks, for his daughter's death in Texas into Zodiac crimes. So as I clear him from the Zodiac stuff, it's because I think that Tim Miller knew instinctively the things that I told him about his letter is a definite cross connection to the Zodiac cases. So instead of, admitting that it's more likely that Jack Terrence, being from Texas and in Texas all the time, was a possible suspect for this stuff, was easier for him to try to force fit Clyde into Zodiac, which we then determined that it wasn't even possible.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No. So I didn't actually compare Clyde Hedrick to the handwritten version of Tim Miller's letter because, again, I have no way of validating where that handwritten version came from. But I did compare him to the Zodiac, and I excluded him as a Zodiac suspect. Tim did call me in 2021, I want to say 2022. Maybe I started in 2022, so it would have been early 2023 to see if I still believe Jack Terrence was the Zodiac. And I said, yeah, Tim, I've not moved off of it. I was as serious as I am now as I was then, and it is still the same person. So clearly, well after the lawsuit that he took out against Clyde, he was still rationalizing and beating himself up that he might have the wrong person and there's a potential for someone else having been involved. When Dennis
knows that Clyde was not Zodiac.
Yeah, and that there's a good potential for his letter having had come from the author of the Zodiac letters, not to mention that we've got Jack, who has proximity with the locations and areas of all of these deaths. I just lost it.
Just the fact that she was abducted like from a phone booth at a convenience store. I mean, that's Zodiac all over it. Phone booths, the Vallejo. It's
the Lake Berryessa. He went to a payphone and called after he was done with that murder. I know that while Dennis was in Texas with Tim Dennis had told me Tim had admitted to some nefarious ways that he was involved with, and that he felt bad that he had not been there for his daughter during that time frame. And it kind of reminds me of some of the things that we've talked about with Lindsay in regards to John Walsh and John Ramsey, and the things that they might have been involved with, or the circles of people that seem to float around them, are very consistent with some of the things that Tim Miller told Dennis. And I wish myself that I could get, Tim Miller on the phone to confirm some of these things, because I think it's very important for these people to be honest about what they were involved with if we're going to figure this out and put this together. Right? I mean, there's that sense that the Ramseys were involved with their own child's death, which I don't believe that they caused by any means, but I do believe they possibly know why.
Wow. Yeah, it's deeper than the surface, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's not just some random. It's not just some random. No.
Same with Cheryl Bates. It's like she had to die. Why did she have to die?
Right. To create news stories, to help the newspapers make money. Is there something else deeper, like a syndicate involved?
And have to do with her father and his military background?
And what he was involved with? Yeah, all of these things. So this is another letter that I found on Tom Voigt's website, and it's called The Trailer Writing. Now, it was done, I'm not sure actually of the year that this was done. It was uploaded, or I pulled it off his website in 2009. And then, of course, that was about 7 months after I started the case, and I was on a hunt for actual letters that had not been altered or changed. This one, it says, it's typewritten above it, in answer to asking for more details about the good times I had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy to supply even more material. All people who are shaking hands shake hands like that. Now, several of these references were made by the Zodiac in other communications. The supply you with even more material sounds like a follow-up to the 2003 letter where he's saying, let me make this movie as a blockbuster hit. Right? And the trailer writing is because it's purportedly a hoax writing that was found in a movie trailer while they were making the Zodiac movie. So I'm not sure if it's the 2007 release of Jake Gyllenhaal, or if there was an earlier movie in 2003 or 2005 the Zodiac was aware of that was being made. I just don't really have a time frame or reference to this, because the date I pulled it was 2009, and it doesn't indicate when it was actively or I didn't log at the time when it was put up on Tom Voigt's site. So,
okay, yeah. So when you say the word trailer, which is often a synonym for like a preview of a movie, this is actually like an actor's trailer or something that they change it and whatnot. Okay.
Yes. So this was purportedly found in one of those trailers where they were on scene for the making of the Zodiac movie.
Wow, that's crazy.
So timing of this could be very important. I mean, if this was 2003, 2004,
this is right before Jack dies, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, the movie was released in 2007, and so you'd have to suspect that the making of it would have been at least a year, right?
Right.
In advance, which would be 2006, if not even longer. I mean, I've seen them take a year to cut, edit, and actually put something together in order for it to be ready for the public. So could it have been the 2007 movie that they were actively working on in the 2003?
They don't, the productions are always slow. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So again, doing a handwriting examination on this is still obviously in the mix, because I have that highlighted up in yellow in there. And at one point I just stopped doing handwriting because there was so much coming in, and I really had no way to validate where it came from, other than what we're being told. And we can see, honestly, what we're being told throughout this whole presentation isn't always the truth. Well, one last letter before Jack passes on April 11th of 2006. This letter, or greeting card, no less, is written to Bruce Ivins. And the postmark on it is Trenton, New Jersey, which I thought was interesting because that's what the Scorpion letters talked about, was, New Jersey, and 23 new victims. And so some more cross-referencing there.
The first letters from the Anthrax come from Jersey too?
Well, they were mailed out of Princeton, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So again, and that's what makes this greeting card so interesting is because, or greeting card, it looks like it's written on it. I'm sorry, not a greeting card. Looks like it's written on Hyatt Hotel Resort.
Yeah, it's like a postcard.
Paper. Says all information contained herein is unclassified. Date 12/10/2008. Unclassified. So, it's unclassified in 2008, but the mailing of this was April 11th of 2006. And it says, "Hello, Bruce, a gift from Princeton. Enjoy the postmark." I feel like that's a direct relation to the Anthrax letters. Of course, him being the number one suspect, I suppose, at that time. Yeah, he's basically within a year from now, he's going to find himself in being interrogated in regards to this crime. So let's see. Between April and May of 2006, we see that Mark Karr is also beginning to take credit for the Jonbenet Ramsey through Michael Terry. He's actually communicating with another journalist back here in the United States from out of the country. So we're seeing the timing of all of this stuff kind of starting to play out. So it says, wrote Ivins as he was a suspect in the Anthrax case, and the FBI held a press conference and tried to close the case on him in 2012. I saw the news conference for this. A week later, Congress came back and dismissed their findings for having no motive. Handwriting was not a match, and there was no evidence to suggest he committed the crimes. And of course, we always have redactions, and I always wonder about the redactions. If this isn't part of what we know to be related to the Zodiac or some other item, why is it redacted? Like, did this say airmail? Did this up here say the Phantom? Like, what?
Well, who posted this letter?
What's that?
Where did you get this?
Probably the FOIA files. By the look of these numbers, this was supplied in regards to the FOIA files.
What you're saying, though, is they've been altered.
Well, they've been redacted. This box that's been placed over top of information is covering up something they don't want us to see. But I think we're also going to see a connection with the actual stamps. Like I said, at the end of this presentation, and I talked about this earlier in the show, when we get to the end of this presentation, I'm going to be showing you slides of all the cross connection of the linguistics and the poetic references and the stamps and the postmarks and all of the things that cross connect these communications to one author. And the stamps are a big one. And I believe that we have a relation with these stamps in another crime spree as well. So we'll see that. Although, let's go back. Hold on. I think the relation, if I was to see this correctly, ooh, let me go back, because that just, I feel like, no, maybe not. I feel like there's a possibility there's a connection between Tim Miller's stamp. The eye doesn't hold memory. When we get to stamps, we'll get to see it. But I feel like there's a possibility there's a cross connection between those stamps. But again, that would be the similar time frame between 2005 and 2006. Which brings us actually to the faces of Jack Terrence Jr. Dun, dun, dun. Just kind of wanted to put these all back to back. Now, I'm still kind of on the fence about this one. I've always been told that this was Jack, and it is possible. My son went from blonde, straight, thin hair to a thick, brillowy, dirty dishwater brown hair. So I guess it is possible for you to go from what looks like a thinner blonde to a brown. Now, of course, this looks more curly. In some cases, it looks curly. In some cases, it doesn't. There we go. That looks like that bushy, curly style hair that they note for the Zodiac having sticking out of different places. But we get to see him as he is in Chicago, Illinois, which is where I placed him back in 1945 during the lipstick killing spree. Here is in the LA area. This is in
the bottom left one. He was the youngest of all the pictures.
Yes.
Because his face filled out more. He looks a little more slender there.
Right. Yeah, he looks like a skinny little kid. And it may have been his first attempt at going into the military when they denied him because he didn't weigh enough and he was still only either 16 or 17, not quite making the mark. They told him to go, gain some weight and come back kind of thing. And then, of course, we begin to see like
16, because I think Lee Harvey Oswald joined the military at 17. So they took people at 17 with the consent of the parent.
Oh, okay. Well, I did not know that. But then maybe it was a weight mark that he didn't make at that particular point in time rather than just an age mark. But they did tell him to go. At least that's Dennis's recollection, is he left and ate a bunch of bananas, he said, to gain weight. So, of course, this here is in the Riverside area with Letha, his first wife. And then, of course, this is his ham radio debut with him at the machine, and the one that's most closely representative of what he looked like during the 69-70 era. I want to say this picture was 1971, which is very weird because this one is 1962, 1963.
He looks fat there.
Yeah, he looks fatter and
that's
older.
The IBM picture, right?
Yeah, no, this is the GE. Nuclear waste.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, power plant where he designed this system he's standing in front of, which they patented for $110,000. And it removed water waste from nuclear. It removed water from nuclear waste. So that's pretty ingenious to be able to devise something like that. And for it to be patented for $110,000. And he himself was making approximately $53,000 at this time, which has always been the biggest question for me, is that who walks away in the 60s from a $50,000 a year job? You're making bank.
$500,000 now.
Yeah, you're making bank, and you just walked away to put up 2 mobile homes on property in Texas. What? And at the end of 63, when all the hubbub with JFK went down, here's Jack going back to Texas. And I spoke to his then mistress, because he would have been cheating on Letha with Doris Reynolds, who worked in HR, and said that he just up and left on his own. He wasn't fired. He didn't quit. There wasn't layoffs. I'm sorry, he did quit. There wasn't layoffs, so he wasn't, ousted by the company. He chose to walk off, and then she up and followed him at a later point in time. Some more pictures here throughout the years. Again, like some of these are just like, wow, this is Jack with this beard. I know this image is a little bit hard to see, but this beard still got that gut that's hanging over the top of his belly or his belt, as described by many. Barrel chested, as they would say, right? Got the big belly and then the flat chest, which is kind of the barrel shape. And then throughout the years, some of these are actually pictures I did get a chance to take copies of that did put him back during some of the unsolved murders in Texas. So I do have some, I just don't have as many. And I thought more made the deck stack higher, which was more proof that it was likely him, because every time there's an unsolved murder, he happens to be in the Texas area. He definitely seems to have a never-ending change of appearance, and we've seen him with black hair, we've seen him with brown hair, gray hair, reddish-brown hair. Like, he's rocked the gamut, and he's not beyond dyeing his hair. We saw that in, I think, 1975 pictures up here when he was in the North Highlands and Kirby area of the Sacramento. Yeah, he had black hair and black through his beard, which he'd never had black hair. Like, he was never black in color. So definitely had to be dyeing, and lost a bunch of weight. I mean, a large amount of weight in comparison to the 1971.
Doesn't even look like it.
I know, but it's definitely him with them shiny boots and them pleated brown pants. Polyester, baby, polyester. We'd be hard pressed to determine that it's the same individual. If I was to see these pictures independently of one another and not know who Jack was, I would certainly not think some of these pictures were the same person, for sure.
One thing about Jack, he likes his food and he likes his women.
And he will marry a couple at a time. He will marry a couple at a time. Turns out he had to divorce Doris twice. So Doris was his mistress while he was married to Letha. And then I guess Doris attempted one divorce. For whatever reason, it did not go through. And so Jack marries Nora, but is still currently married to Doris. So has to get an annulment or a divorce. I guess it's more of an annulment with Nora, and then do a real divorce with Letha, I want to say in the 80s, and then remarries Nora. And then, of course, during his trial and tribulations of attempting to I guess it was assault with a deadly weapon on the family, ends up in another divorce with Nora and then remarry. Like it's chaos. The whole thing is so back and forth.
Those are all his kids?
These are his 4 children.
Wow.
So one of them passed. The same age. That's what you did back then, right? You got more money from the military with each kid you popped out. So pop.
One after another. Yeah.
One after another. Yeah, he lost one of them, I want to say, in the 80s to an accident and something to do with drinking, which caused him to be sober for some time. One of these is, I want to say this is probably, I'm wondering if this is Denny being the older. It kind of looks like his face. And then this might have been the younger brother that died and passed. And then he had 2 daughters. So I'm not sure what occurred with either of these people or if they're still alive, other than one of them. I know that one of the daughters was the one that worked at the Sahara Casino in South Lake Tahoe, where Donna Lass was last seen. And we saw pictures. Lana, her name was Lana. We saw pictures with Jack during Christmas time with her in 1970. So that proved or showed that Jack was migrating to South Lake Tahoe, because by 1971, he's working at the South Lake Tahoe Linen Company, where he meets Nora and begins dating Nora, Dennis's mom. Here's some pictures from Stephen Dewhurst's books, just to kind of remind everybody of what we're looking at. So ballistic photos of the Lake Herman Road shell casings. Note the semi-rectangle firing pin impression that he's showing on the backside of these bullets, which are consistent. So firing pin impressions from the author's Remington 572 lightweight is on the left, and the J.C. Higgins model is on the right. So you can see the they attempted to try and say that there was a possibility that it was either a Remington 572 or a J.C. Higgins Model 80. Stephen Dewhurst had the J.C. Higgins Model 80 right here on the right side. You can see that the firing pin on that is round, not square. So that's why he's showing that the Remington 572 lightweight, which is the left with the squarish pin, note the rectangular impressions from the 572 versus the circular impressions of the Model 80. So he's showing us that it could not have been the J.C. Higgins Model 80 that was used at the Lake Herman Road shootings. And of course, then he is circling the Remington 572, and it's a 22 rifle pump action, accurate, lightweight, easy to handle, and quiet. Also a 30-30 hunting rifle is involved here. We've got a couple handguns, and then another rifle. I don't know my guns well enough to be able to say what these are, other than what Stephen Dewhurst actually printed in his book. So an excerpt, which I thought was extremely interesting, because Stephen was on different tasks, and of course we did not communicate a whole heck of a lot, especially before him writing his book, but I was finding things at the same time he was. So it says Jack hunted along the radial lines for possibly 30 or more years, operating at a scale and with an enthusiasm that the police could not fathom, with the exception of Sheriff Stripke, of course, who sensed that there was a master criminal at work who was drawing a pattern across the landscape with his crimes. Keep that in mind, guys. But Jack knew the cops, and he was probably not concerned that they would ever figure it out. The pattern was not an easy one to see. You needed to know the things that Jack knew in order to figure it out. And Jack knew that no cop would ever be smart enough to figure it out. Not only did Jack have specialized knowledge that the cops did not, Jack was sure that the kind of people who could figure it out did not become cops. Why would a cop in California connect their local murder to a crime in Minnesota or Texas or Nevada, or murders in Arizona for that matter? When it became apparent that 4 unsolved homicides near Flagstaff, Arizona corresponded to periods when Jack Terrence was in the area and during periods of great stress in his personal life, people I talked to about it laughed at the possibility that the Zodiac Killer had done it, but no one had a better suspect or explanation. Hold on. Look at this. This is California, Minnesota, I-45 in Texas, Albany, New York. I found a Z, and this is actually a progression of 4 unsolved murders across the United States at one time. And he's right. Why would the cops connect something like this? It starts
at Mount Diablo.
Well, no, Mount Diablo I would think would be more up here somewhere.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, it's pretty close.
But it's still a Z. Still a Z, it's connecting those 4 areas. So that is about all we have for you guys today. I want to thank you for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed this presentation. We're going to be climbing into what makes Jack the best suspect, all the evidence, circumstantial or otherwise. And we're going to start seeing that in the next couple weeks as I wrap this stuff up. Thank you for being here, Nolan.
Thank you.
See you guys next Friday.
Peace.
Yes.
Oh,